Africans at home and throughout the diaspora. Unity is strength. We got the power.
Stop the fussing and the fighting. Now's the time to do the right thing.
We do more UNITY. Come.
Stop the fussing and the fighting. Now's the time to do the right thing.
In the spirit of Umoja, embrace with love.
Let's do it right now. We've got to do it right. Stop the fussing and the fighting.
Right now.
Now's the time to do the right thing. Let's do it right now. We've got to do it.
Yes, yes. Let's do it right. This is Jamala Rogers, your host of Voices from the Battlefield. And we are here in St. Louis, and we are live on Facebook, and hopefully in the very near future, we'll be live on Black Radio Hall of Fame. But until then, we are going to continue to have our guests, continue to engage in these important conversations, pass on knowledge that you may or may not know or have, but it's all about connecting the folks who are on the battlefield, and they are part of a number of struggles. And they, as you will find out today, they're doing that through art, through literacy. And so we have two special guests today. But I want to just say a minute to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean who've been hit with Melissa. And some of us have folks down there, both friends and relatives, and so it definitely is not an eerie time for the Jamaicans. This is the worst storm ever. It was worse than Katrina, y'all, if you could even imagine that. So that tiny island is going to endure a lot in the days, months, and years to come. And so let's send out our thoughts and our heartfelt energies to them for the kind of strength that they're going to need for the recovery process. Some of us know a little bit about that from the tornado that we had in St. Louis that we are still recovering from. So this is the results of global warming. The meteorologists and scientists have already said these episodes will be more intense, longer, and so I just think we need to brace ourselves both for the actual events, but also what we can do to stave off some of the attacks on the environment that have been happening. So particularly from folks who say there's no such thing as global warming or climate changes and all of that crazy stuff. But here we are in the midst of chaos. So this is a time when I remind you that we still have a 34-count felon in the White House, totally unhinged, taking us into chaos in many different ways. There are about 42 million Americans who will be losing SNAP benefits come next 48 hours. So we see what the plan is, and he is exhibiting pain and suffering on this country in ways that we have not known before. But we have to stay strong, and we have to be strategic. We have to be organized. Some of us are still using the energy from the No Kings protests so that we make things happen locally, and that's what we should continue to do. And we're going to give some places and some things that people can get involved in St. Louis before we leave the air. So we have one of our guests here, and hopefully the other one will join us at some point during the broadcast. But we have with us right here is Vivian. And Vivian Gibson is the author of The Last Children of Mill Creek. And even though that book is about 5 years old, it is still a need for us to talk about Mill Creek. And this is because we have the MAGA folks are in erasure mode. So they are erasing history of Black folks, erasing the culture of Black folks, erasing the accomplishments of Black folks in this country. So I think it is even more important that we lift up lost history, because a lot of folks, even in St. Louis, didn't even know about Mill Creek. And so here's the author with us today, and we'll be talking a little bit about how this project came about. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, one of the things, because you had not written a book before, uh, what was it about this story that you thought needed to be told? Because there's other communities like Mill Creek, maybe not the kind of definition because it was a lot of people there. But in my book Ferguson is America, when I was really trying to research some of the history of how land is taken and how people are pushed off land, I came across Hooverville in St. Louis, which was on the riverfront. And I don't think a lot of people knew that the St. Louis Hooverville was the largest in the country.
Hmm.
And it was not as large as Mill Creek, but it's about 5,000. But it also had definition and organization. It had their own churches, their own social institutions, even their own little mayor.
Yep.
And for the very same reasons, they were bulldozed, even though they went well beyond, I think, the time that they intended to, because that was during the Depression, and the
Hmm.
folks had to come together to organize and support each other. So that's the way that they did that, and that's the way the Hoovervilles did it all across the country. But it was declared a slum
Yeah.
in 1936, and those people were completely like bulldozed off. So
Yep.
this notion of slum, when it comes to poor working class Black folks, is that what motivated you to really write the book?
No, actually, I was probably the last one to get on board the concept or the idea of writing this book. I was simply writing stories of my childhood. I retired and I was not a writer, as you said. But I'd been writing all along, but primarily ideas and memories. My mother died when I was 27, and at that age I realized how little we had talked about. You think you have all the time in the world with your parents and you've asked all the questions, but I hadn't. And having free time after retiring, I joined a creative writing workshop of senior citizens. So it was basically, I'm writing these stories, you all tell me if they're good, kind of thing. And one thing led to another, and there was so much interest in what I was writing about. And it was basically my childhood, and my childhood was in Mill Creek. So I wish I'd had a more noble reason for writing this book. But it was basically my parents died before I had children. I wanted them to know what it was like to be with my children, primarily my mother, because I adored her. And so that's what I was writing about. But as I shared, more and more people were saying, I never heard of this. Where was that? This is so interesting. 20,000 people were displaced. I
Yeah.
mean, all the businesses and the churches and the institutions and the culture, I realized had been erased or was this close to being erased anyway. And as I tried to do research beyond my memory, there was very little. And so I just thought this is important. But I was reluctant because I was not a writer by training, but I've been writing all my life. I'm a storyteller naturally, and it was an important story. And so as it progressed, I realized how important it was. And that's what I did. And you're right. It's 5.5 years since this book is published. The sales have not gone down, and my speaking on it and teaching about it has not lessened at all. So there's still so much interest in this erased Black community and so many more around the country and the world.
Yeah, I think I just want to clarify because I think in many ways we use the term similarly. So yes, you've always been a writer. So don't say you're not a writer. You may not have been an author, which is
Yeah,
a published writer, but
which I
most
am
of us are,
now.
yeah, most of us are writers. And so
That's right.
And folks like us are the storytellers, the griots, to make sure that the history gets passed down. And so,
Yeah.
even though you started with your own particular history, it comes a time when you're going to interact with other families who live there, and
Hmm.
and it gets amplified and it starts to grow, and next thing you know, you got you got the children of Mill
Yes,
Creek and not just a child of Mill Creek.
that's
So
right.
talk a little bit about the process after you wrote the book, because now you're morphing into a documentary
Yeah.
that includes many other voices. So talk about that for us.
Yeah, it was also very clear. First of all, I come from a large family of 8 children and nine if you count a friend of my brother's who came for dinner one night and stayed for 4 years. Uh, and I write about that. But one thing you realize when you write about yourself or write a memoir that you can't write about yourself without including all the people around you. And in my case, there were lots of children, and in the community there were lots of children and who were my friends. And so I wrote about our lives, what it was like to be in this environment, almost a cocoon of safety and support, not even realizing what segregation was and what deprivation was. And so I wrote from this perspective of a child so that I could just show almost like a camera on my shoulder what I was hearing, what I was seeing, how people made me feel, how supported I was, how free I felt in this environment that had, as I was older, came to realize what it all meant. But I didn't know it then. And so I think in doing that, I revealed a culture, what W.E.B. Du Bois calls behind the veil. How did we exist in this segregated environment and still keep a society, a community going for ourselves? And it was very surprising. You talked about the documentary. I also knew later on, a couple of years later, after the book was so successful, but there were other stories that were similar to mine, but maybe even different from mine. And so I wanted to share the story of other people, other children who may have been older than me and had different experiences. So I identified 18 individuals who were children and young adults around the time that Mill Creek was demolished and interviewed them for my documentary just to get more perspective on what it was like to live in this community and then watch it disappear. And so that's what the documentary is about. But it's the process of doing both the book and the documentary was just so revealing to me. I was learning as I was writing. I would write about myself, but then I had to do research to support some
Yeah.
of the things that I remembered as a child. You know,
Right. Right.
even with my siblings who were all older than me, I would take the same situation and say, well, what about this? And what I remembered as a 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, my then 16 or 18-year-old siblings saw it in a very, very different way. And I thought other people in that community might have different perspectives too. And I continue to learn. And once I started writing and people started reading the book, I started getting bombarded with other people, excuse me, saying, I live there too. And this is where I live. You know, we have something here in St. Louis called the St. Louis question, where people
Yeah. Yeah.
ask you what school you went to, what high school. And part of that is to identify exactly where you are or were in this society, what community and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
You could determine it by what high school you went to. Well, I have a Mill Creek question, and it's basically, where did you live? And or people will volunteer. I don't even have to say. People will yell at me on the street and say, I lived at 2718 Clark. I went, yay. And they
Mm,
just want to let me know that they're from that community. They were there. Uh, and it's been a really community building exercise for me, for people to just come out and thank me. Black people thank me for telling the story.
yeah.
It's just,
And I can't really believe that because what you're doing is actually honoring their existence, honoring their childhoods, honoring uh, their their families. And
mhm.
so when you're talking, Vivian, it reminds me of I had some of the survivors of Pruitt Igoe who were survivors of the what I call the biological warfare
Mhm.
that when they dropped the spray
Mhm.
on those children, and one of the things that resonated with me while you were talking is the kind of joy when they talk about their childhoods.
Yes.
So when people look at Pruitt Igoe, all they have very negative connotations.
Yes.
Images come up of like, all negative. And
Mhm.
yet these folks felt, as you said, safe. They felt cared for. They felt
Mhm.
loved. And people find that hard to believe, but I think
Yeah.
that was, for me, I think it was the way that we operated as black families under segregation in the 50s and
Mhm.
60s.
Mhm.
We did have some community. We didn't have a whole lot, but what we had, we shared it, and we shared it with folks who then reciprocated. And
Yes.
so that's what community is really all about. And I
Mhm.
think about this whole notion of where people live. And since I did the book, I've been thinking a lot more about land, how people occupy land. And I was talking to you before we went on air about just coming back from Kalamazoo College, where they did a project about land and location and people on those lands. So Kalamazoo is in Potawatomi land, and so we had some folks from that tribe come in. But this notion of land is so important that I don't think people really understand what it means. And
Mhm.
even in my book, I talk about this concept of root shock, which is comes from Mindy Fully Love. And one thing she talked about, I mean, she had a psychological trauma tied to the land when you're just uprooted. And
Yes.
I think about when you get uprooted like that, it's almost like being in a natural disaster. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to get that connection. And one of the things we know that has happened is that most black and brown communities were pretty much decimated when they ran the highways through there, which is what happened with Mill Creek in '59.
Yeah.
So they have a systematic way of tearing up and uprooting our communities
Yeah.
under the guise of what progress.
Yeah.
So can you go a little bit deeper into what for starting with what the dimensions are for Mill Creek, so people who live in St. Louis can say, okay, that's the perimeter. Now I know where it was, because you don't
Yeah.
know that now. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
because there's
there.
nothing there. And that's what people will all, can you do a tour? I said, there's nothing there. There's nothing to
Right,
see
right.
from Mill Creek. Well, and I want to be careful to explain that when you see a map of Mill Creek today, one is in my book, and you see them all over now, that is the urban renewal footprint of Mill Creek. And it starts at Grand Avenue, which is the center of St. Louis University. So it's Grand Avenue at Lindo. Going east, Lindo merges into Olive Street, and you continue east to 20th Street, which is where our new soccer stadium is. You then go south on 20th Street, and you are at the intersection of Market and 20th Street, and that's Union Station. That is our major train station that's been there since the 1800s. It was adjacent to this Mill Creek Black community. You continue on 20th Street, you pass over railroad tracks and go, you get to Shoto. A lot of people don't remember that it was all the way over to Shoto because there are train tracks in the middle. Then you come back west to Grand, and that's 465 acres of land that was the heart of Mill Creek and the heart of downtown St. Louis. And when people say that they didn't know that Black people were there, 20,000 Black people concentrated in row houses, no grass, no parks, nothing, just houses and factories and schools and churches. People say they didn't know. I said, how could you not know? If you drove down Market Street, which was the main thoroughfare in St. Louis, in any city, when it's called Market Street, it's the center of town usually. All you had to do was look right or left, and there were Black people walking around because it was a walking community. So people were on the streets. So I don't know how people could say that they didn't know we were there. They don't know. They hadn't heard of us. And I've decided that part of that not knowing was the name Mill Creek. It wasn't really until urban renewal that that strong identity of that name Mill Creek was assigned to that space. Before that, Black people lived along Mill Creek, which it was a creek that went straight through the city. It actually was the major waterway that the city grew up around, and people don't even know that. It is now those railroad tracks that I talked about earlier. There was a cholera epidemic in the late 1700s. They had to drain it. And eventually they put railroad tracks there and they built Union Station. So people are not even aware. There's Damon. Hey!
So
Hey,
sorry.
Damon,
Hey, how
that's
y'all doing?
okay. We are glad to
So
have you. You know, we didn't miss a beat, so
I
we
hear
gonna bring
that.
you
I
in a
hear
minute.
that.
so Damon, I'm
So
talking about where Mill Creek is or was, and so that people can kind of identify with it because there's nothing there. But thankfully, because of Damon, you can now go someplace and look and stand and experience Mill Creek in granite. So I hope that helps with the identification.
yeah, it does, and I just want to say to the whole thing about what people don't know. I think that we elders now we know how people, Black people particularly, live their lives, and usually it's day to day and within a certain block. So to
Mhm.
be able to venture out and see what's happening, particularly during segregation, that just was not going to happen. And
Right.
even though segregation has been stripped for the most part in terms of where people can go, folks are still
Segregated.
blinded by like what's in front of them. Like
Yeah.
why would you look to the left and say, "Oh, I wonder what that is," or look to the right, what's that about?
Mhm.
I don't, we've been like curtailed in so many ways that to venture out and wonder, both with the O and the A, wander and wonder,
Mhm.
that has just been like smashed in us. But I think your intro for Damon is a good segue to just bring him into the conversation. And Damon, one thing about you, it's hard to put you in some kind of pigeonhole because you're activist, artist, commentary. I mean, so you are all of those things, but your connection to Mill Creek, I think, is pretty powerful because there is now some physical symbolic thing that now if people didn't know about it as they are going into that damn soccer field, they'll have to like look at that. So talk about where that came from. And I know you worked with Vivian who was telling you the stories to make sure it informed your sculptures. So talk about what that was like and how you came up with the artistic manifestation of Mill Creek.
Yes, man. Well, I want to say thank you for your for even inviting me here, and also like for my tardiness for forgiving me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh
doing all, but
no, no.
I, I want to say that along the lines of what y'all was just saying is like I didn't know about it. You know how we talk about city, like that's where my whole journey starts with this. That like I grew up in East St. Louis, and uh, I had a father that was pretty, pretty militant from top to bottom. He had me doing. He had homework for me that wasn't school homework. He had me learning all these. You know what I mean? Like I had one set of homework. I had
Yes.
they homework and my homework, and so. I was very almost embarrassed that I didn't know that there was a historic black neighborhood that was a thriving place. That when people talk about Harlem and they talk about that and like that these in Memphis, these places were wherever black people congregated. There was one there, and I didn't know that there was one here, right? And so when I first started my journey to that is now this monument. It was basically for a contest that the GRG had put up about they want to design a greenway, and the team that I got with from their research, people that wasn't from St. Louis, that researched up, that went way back and started, not even it ain't way back. It be like my parents,
Right, right,
y'all
exactly.
was alive for it. My parents was alive for, we be trying to talk about these things like they
Like
millions
it's
of years.
ancient
No,
history.
like no, it's
Yeah.
people that we
No,
know
no.
that are
This is
walking and
living
talking.
history.
Yeah,
Living history.
yeah, that
Yeah,
know it.
yeah.
But it was just before my time. And but these out of towners, these white folks, the ones that tell me about this, and I was like, well, I'm gonna do this my section, so y'all could do whatever else up and down, like, but I want to do something right here in this section, mainly so another kid don't have to, go another black kid ain't gonna be like I didn't know about this. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Just the there's one if there's the low hanging fruit is that we can at least alleviate that problem. That won't happen again. You know what I'm saying? For as long as the thing stands. And from there on, that's when I started working around. Well, why don't I know about it? And so if it's a history, and so history is also it's individual, it's communal, and it's also which community is in charge of writing it down, which individual is in charge of keeping record of things, and that's why we usually left out because the society that we live in doesn't even see us as people, let alone things outside of uh, I guess capital or what kind of monetary gain you could get out of us. We come over here as property, and they think that of everything that we produce, whether it's art, our music, our culture, our clothes, is something that can be separated from these people, right?
Mhm.
And monetized.
And
Yeah.
monetize, right?
Mhm.
And that can we get to that later, but it also is it's ironic that the only reason this happens is because a lot of money was going to be made in that space, and that isn't escaped on me. Like I'm not slow. I'm not I'm not the artist that's just in his own high somewhere
Hmm.
in their own world. I'm very aware of socioeconomic and political conditions that allowed me to be able to speak about this. You know what I'm saying? But you got to take the good with the bad sometimes. So, or I
Yeah.
guess that's the best way I could put it. I need better words around that, but later. So when I started this, I didn't know about no soccer team coming. I didn't know none of it. Like this is just a project that I started with this group of people that and through GRG that I want to see happen and they want to see happen, right? Along the way, we find investors and the St. Louis SC was one of those people that came in and would and the GRG took them the idea that or they knew that we was working on the Greenway. They knew that they was on the Greenway and missed the part that happened and took them this idea of what I want to do. And that it resonated with them or whatever it may be. They got on board, and so that's when things got real. And so
Mhm.
that and through that part of it, that's when I had to figure out. I learned, and I really appreciate LJC, the architects I worked with, GRG, because I didn't know the world around how things physically go up in space. Like in a public monument with gas and water underneath things in the middle of a metropolitan, a city, American city. That it ain't just what I've been used to throughout my careers.
Right.
I do what I want, and I ask permission later. That sort of thing. This was a little bit different because of all the people that was involved. So I learned a lot about materials, infrastructure, but that's when I knew that I wanted to do something about time and history and the idea of history being covered up, but also being excavated. And so you get history from time passing. So now I know that I just keep going down, common denominator, the least, what's the concentrate of whatever I'm talking about, and it becomes time. And so then I'm like, what is the what symbol, no matter where we go, no matter what color you are, gender, age, language, right? What is something that is universal to humanity that is a symbol of time, right? And the thing that I could think back about, like that I've thought of, is the hourglass. No matter where I went, if I showed somebody that, they would know what that meant, right? They would at least know that we talking about time, right?
Mhm.
And so when we look at those pillars, those are abstractions of the basic shape of an hourglass. Two chambers, one at the top, one at the bottom. And the way that you know time is moving is because the sand moves from the top chamber to the bottom chamber. Super simple, one of the oldest, I guess, technologies we got. You know what I'm saying? One of the oldest technologies that we have as a human race. And so that's why you see the granite and black. I just, one, I like the color black, is my favorite color, but also some stuff I don't want it to be too deep. I want it to be real clear. I
Uh-huh.
think it's the mix between how you layer things to be a good artist, right? I think some people they make things so convoluted and so complex that nobody else gets them. And that's also, I guess, would be my school of activism, that you one of my teachers, that it's people that are my contemporaries of my teachers, whether it's Kayla Reed, Tef Poe, people I came up with. But the idea that some things you have to, like, if you're trying to get people on one accord, you're not just talking to yourself, right? And public art, and art in a gallery are two different things. A gallery is made for people with privilege, quite frankly. You got a privilege to sit up here in the middle of the day when everybody else at work and stare at something until it means something to you. That's a lot of privilege, right? Stuff on the street is people. I'm people on a bus stop, people going to work, people moving, and like, so you catching people of all different walks of life in an environment that you can't control, right? So it has to speak in a different way. So that was another thing that I took into consideration when I was putting this together. The how to physically manifest what Mill Creek, the spirit of what Mill Creek is, right?
And that
And
sand that's in that upper chamber is there. It's fixed as if the memory
yes,
of the sand of time and memory of Mill Creek is there forever.
right, we could stop it, and that's one of the main things too. Is like, if the sand ain't moving, then that means time has stopped. So and also that rock is limestone. Limestone is indigenous to this place. That's how the alcohol empire that was built here is because of the caves that was
Mhm.
formed, and you could cool things there. And it's something that's very indigenous to this place, and it speaks to even time before that neighborhood. That this place, and there are a collection of memories and histories inside of this soil and this ground, and this collection of stories is something that we finna take time with and sit with and stop time and
Yeah,
put it up as high as possible. Like, you have to confront it. It's not a plaque on the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, they 15 feet tall,
yeah,
right? So if you walk up on them, you're gonna have to confront this thing that was supposed to be hidden, that was supposed to be
yeah.
forgotten. And so I really appreciate that, Ms. Vivian, that you brought that up, because that was one of the main things. And also
Yeah.
those quotes inside of the bottom chamber is because those are quotes from actual people. You one of them, but people that actually lived in that space. And I'm very mindful and strategic about the fact that just because I'm black don't mean that I'm every black person, and don't mean that I went through what y'all went through. And I think that society, especially this country, tries to lump us all together, and then we fight to be individuals, and then we end up doing it to ourselves anyway and lumping all ourselves together anyway, right? Because it's a natural thing to do. So I know that I come from one place. I'm from East St. Louis. It's close. It's not the exact same. I didn't grow up in the same time period. I grew up in the crack era. That's something y'all didn't have to worry about. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in a different context of being black in a space than what you grew up in. So I wanted to let those people that grew up in that world speak to that place that we're supposed to be memorializing, um, making a monument to. It's not a funeral, so it's not a memorial, right?
That's
So Um, and in each one, I also didn't want them to all be chipper and bright memories.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't the same. And one thing about segregation is it superseded class. So all you black folks, rich, poor, we finna put all y'all together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right, right,
everybody, some people might have had a great experience.
Yeah.
Some people
right,
might
right,
not have had the same experience, but
right.
because you were being defined by an arbitrary uh and I guess an arbitrary attribute, the color of your skin. So all of y'all get together. All of y'all might not have they might not all have been black. They might have just been dark. It could have been Indian people in there, Mexican people. It's just like all y'all black to us.
Right,
Like, you
right,
know what I
right.
mean? And that's how we get that's how we get our different complexions. You know,
Yeah, for
I want
sure,
to
for
be clear
sure.
about those I guess that those people were speaking, whether they hear or not, where that those people are speaking.
Damon, I
And
want to talk about I'm going to take over as your
Go,
no,
interview.
go.
go.
Yes,
This
ma'am.
is a conversation.
I want to talk about our relationship.
Yeah.
You spoke earlier about the fact that you from East St. Louis and you thought you were uh, familiar with culture and Black struggle, but you had never heard of Mill Creek. So, can you talk about your relationship and the relationship with a cadre of other Black elders from that community? And,
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm glad you asked that, Vivian, because I know that Damon said that working with you all was in the project was one of the most fulfilling moments and experiences that he's had. So that's pretty powerful right there.
yeah, it was fulfilling for us too.
Yeah. It was a great experience, and it was I learned a lot, one of the main things that I learned, right, is that people are probably like people that's older than me have told me, like, you could see in a little kid who they're gonna be at 80 years old, and by being around people, because my parents were older. I came in late. My mom was 42, my dad was 42 when they had me, but it was just them. And my brothers and sisters was more the age that my parents would have normally been. So it's like two sets of parents. But getting to talk to people with such a rich, you've done so much. Like you've done so much, and we forget that every day survival is a lot. So just the stories that, well, I'll say something, one thing will spark something, and that people start telling me stories, and that's what I want to. I want to hear about the everyday life, and I didn't want to over-aggrandize us or make us subhuman. I think that we constantly fighting for our humanity, and humanity is getting to be both. So one thing I did learn was I got to see people that had been and that didn't care anymore. Like there's a thing about getting to an age that I don't care what you think. I'm gonna tell you what's like, this is what I'm saying. I don't, and that sort of candor um is rare in the world we live in right now. So that's one thing that I truly appreciated, and I try to take and carry with me. But your book was one of my main, I will say, that was one of my main I guess grounding things that wasn't from the Missouri Historical Society, because it was a memoir. It wasn't
It was an
it wasn't
authentic voice.
yes,
Yeah.
and it wasn't sterilized to like numbers, and like most of the shit is or things most of the things are like these the senses and just names of people and what they do.
Yeah.
It ain't it has no soul to it, and
Yeah.
the whole point of this artist is to capture soul. So to be in conversation with another artist that did that lived through it, and I get the honor and the privilege to kind of synthesize some of what you were saying alongside these, like, also at the Missouri History Museum, the people that weren't able to ever talk to me, that weren't alive to talk to me. You reading those interviews, you know what I'm saying, was also grounding, and also knowing that, like, most of the stuff I'm going through, it might change. The technology might have changed a little bit, the access to things, but most of the same problems that y'all had, I got.
Yeah.
It might look a little different, but it's also a grounding of being a overall universal experience that we got as Black people. That was a big deal for me. I had Miss Gwen was another one that was very supportive.
Gwen Moore.
Every time I see him, Miss Gwen Moore, um, and and some names escape me. You know what I'm saying? But I talked to, I went to a couple of meetings with just the elders from Mill Creek. I went to
We were just
some
all
people.
circled around him.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say this: they found me. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was I wanted to or not. You know what I'm saying? I was getting called, and this Mr. So and so. You know what I'm saying? Or no, another good guy, Mr. Gallagher. He was he's very outspoken gentleman. He definitely reminds me of my father and men of that era and the way that they carried themselves. And it was also I lost my parents during this, so it was also it was refreshing to see that energy still alive in people.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
some point, all of these people from this time, me too, all of the people that's my age, they will be gone. After
yeah,
100
Yeah.
years, it's a cycling out of
Mm-hmm.
energies of certain um ethical codes, more with like the way you
mhm,
see the world. Like it's a natural progression of evolution. So to know that that energy was still here helped me through
yeah,
a lot of things. A lot of
yeah.
things.
Yeah,
It
so
was,
Damon, I want to step back just a minute because I thought it was important for us to hear about the project through the eyes of the artist because
Yeah.
you all look at the world in quite different ways. That's why I like having some kind of affiliation organically with artists because you just do. You just look at the world in a whole different way. So having you go through that and how you sectioned off the pillars, and those are called the pillars of the valley, just so people know. It took some thought to it, but also I think some of that just comes up for artists in terms of what do you want to how do you want people to visualize what happened at Mill Creek and the
mhm,
stories, the people, the culture, the camaraderie. How do you put that into a monument? So
yeah,
for me, that was quite amazing to hear that process.
Yes,
yeah.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I think a lot of times. Oh,
I
go ahead.
talk all the time to students at all levels, and I always end my presentation with Damon and the Pillars of the Valley. And I talk about my favorite parts of the whole monument. And frankly, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Damon, but my favorite part is the numbers on the ground.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
tell people, I said, don't go there and just look at those 15-foot high pillars. I said, look down and look at the ground, and that tells you exactly where that monument is, and that those are addresses of the homes that
yeah,
were in those two blocks. And then you go from those numbers in the ground in the cement. I don't know what it is. If it's granite below, but
yeah,
it's also a horizontal granite piece that has the names of the people who
yeah.
lived in
The
those
plan.
houses and
The
those
plan.
addresses. And not only their names, but their ages and their occupations.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh
And just
my.
Yes,
reading the
ma'am.
occupations of the people who lived in those two blocks is so powerful.
Yeah,
It gives
yeah,
you that gives you a picture of what that society was made up of. So it's more than those granites,
I
those
agree.
granite towers or pillars are wonderful. But look down because there's a huge story there. He also gives you the typography of the valley. He has etched out what the land looked like in the 1600s when indigenous people owned it, and how that valley came about. So there's a lot there, and I tell the story every single time, my son.
Yes, ma'am. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. And
Funny
so I
story.
remember a conversation that we had, Damon, when you were first working on it. And I was questioning, not disagreeing, but questioning whether or not this was some kind of pacification of people around what happened. And,
Yeah,
and, and, and
yeah,
how were we going to make sure that what you were going to create, which was going to acknowledge what
Yeah,
had happened, was not a mere pacification, but was going to be powerful enough to have the messages that you wanted as an artist, but also to reflect the wishes and values of the residents of Mill Creek. So I'm just thinking about, was there any opposition that you had to the project? And particularly now that it is where the new soccer is, and I remember there were times when we, not at the soccer thing, but sometimes at the um, baseball games where we might be using that as a vehicle to pass out leaflets to educate people
Yeah,
about a particular issue. And there would be some white people, and I say white, some white people would say, I
they
don't want
right.
that. I came here to enjoy myself. I don't want to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah,
And then I'm thinking about y'all on sacred ground. First of all, y'all need to know where
Right.
you are, why you are, and stop acting like you privileged to be here because you here because somebody's allowing you to be here. So I know that a powerful piece like that or pieces like that are going to resonate with people in very different ways depending on their relationship to power and relationship to black folks relationship to quote urban renewal. So what has been your the responses that you all have had to the monument by folks other than the residents of Mill Creek?
that well, great. I'm glad the last sentence is perfect because the residents of Mill Creek love it.
That's
Every one
right.
of them I
They
ever
say
talked to,
thank you, as
every
I
one
said
of them I ever,
earlier.
yeah, every last one of them I've ever spoken to.
Yeah.
Those that have no that probably didn't know about it till I told them. Like you know how I didn't know about it. Like you didn't know the place existed until you saw this go up. Is to be expected, and I understand. Black people have been we have been played over and over again. I get it, and that's what I was talking about with the, and that's why I every time I bring this up, every time I speak about this, I feel the need to bring up the fact that I was working on this before these people with money came in here because I
Mhm.
think the idea is that they wanted to do something, so they went and got a black face to give them cover, and that's not what happened. And no matter what I say, it's gonna be people that think that anyway. I'm not really,
But
I got.
if people know you, Damon, there, that's going to be the last thing they think.
I know, and I want to say I appreciate you for the how you asked me those things out of love because you do know me. That's
Mhm.
not what I get all the time, and it's Miss Vivian, we had a thing at the History Museum where I might have took a little too far. Miss Vivian has seen me get angry about because it's just disrespectful. Because and it
Yeah.
ain't you not disrespecting me. I didn't live there. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? You like people want to bring every gripe that they got with somebody to a group of black people that don't have no power no way that just scrounged a little bit of power together, but you don't never take it to the people that you got all of these fucking problems with. That's always it always
Hmm.
boggles my mind,
Yeah.
and most of the time it's people that look just like me, right? And also people that are my elders, people that's y'all age talking to me like they ain't figured out how this world works
Hmm.
and or why things go the way that they go and that you can still stand in the fray and you know what I'm saying, and we still don't have no control over capitalism and how to the degrees that we talking about, right? And
Hmm.
so I have had a lot of opposition from people that I wouldn't expect it from, and sometimes I think sometimes it's legitimate opposition, sometimes it's legitimate questions like the way you was talking to me about things because you do know me. Some of it is just jealousy.
Yeah.
Right, like some of plain and simple, and I didn't think the world. And I had to grow up. Sometimes that's what it is. The world is people are operating, and it don't matter that they look like you or they don't. Some
That's
people
right.
that's just how they move, right? And some things is I get backhanded compliments. Like I get these things where it's like, this is beautiful, and thank God you did, blah blah blah. But this money could have went somewhere else, as though art isn't a basic necessity of human existence, right?
That's
Because if it was about food or water, right, and people think that they can survive without it, right? But we don't realize that everything around us, from these things that we are speaking to each other on,
hmm
is an exercise in imagination and art in some way, shape, or form. And so it's a much more religious practice than we give it credit for
hmm
because of the society we live in. If we was live because of what the Western society has done to the ideas of spirituality, to logic and only logic. 'Cause one thing you were saying earlier about how the artist sees things, and I think there's been this move for people to have to be able to explain everything, and that's not how this works. This is like church, right? Some of it you understand, right? Some of it you understand. Sometimes it's some speaking through you. And you
hmm
ain't supposed to understand everything because if I could put it into words, I wouldn't need art, would I? I would just write a book, right? Some things are a language unto itself that can't be put into words, and I have to trust and believe that you get some out of it that you get what I'm giving, right?
hmm
But I get that backhanded compliment a lot that it could have went somewhere else until I speak with the with the accuracy and passion that I'm known to speak with, and then
Well,
then the
see, Damon, when I hear people say denigrating art or its role in our society, I do talk about like what this world would be without music, without visuals.
yeah,
It would be a damn dead place. And so, but the other, it's not just the aesthetic beauty, it's also the historical affirmation that artists bring. And that's whether you're a photographer, a visual artist, a
yeah,
sculptor, you are helping to not just interpret, but to make sure that that history, that culture continues. And I don't know how long these granite statues last, but they're going to outlast me and you,
I
so
agree.
that the
That's
next two generations are going to have the value of what you all have put together. And so to me, that's the beauty of it, is not just the visual. So in the few minutes that we have left, can you tell people exactly where it is, and that and based on what's been said, people need to go and be able to spend some time there, just like
Yes.
soaking it in and looking at it, and not just do a visual, say, oh, I saw it, because
And looking
it's so
down.
many, yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna say
Look at
it's so many
everything. Look up,
layers.
down,
It's so
around.
many
Yeah,
layers. You got to
I
go
think
up,
that's really
down,
important.
sideways. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this. And that's why I talk about it all the time. David and I got, I think, a really special relationship in the process of
I
putting
agree.
this together because um, I sometimes you don't really know something until you have to teach it or explain it to somebody. And talking to him about just the subtleties of the life in that community was just so important and vital to me. And we've this is not our first time speaking on panels together, and I think we still both learn something from each other. And I think he just did this incredible job that, as you said, will be here for a long time. Hopefully, my book will be here too.
Yeah,
But
it will.
but that granite is really important. And people ask, why was it important? I mean, this kind of happened during that period when we were talking in the nationally about monuments and the importance of them.
Mm,
So we were right in the middle of that when we were having these discussions. And I always tell people it's a place for you to come and start asking questions. Why this happened? Where are these people and where did they go? And why? And so it's a place to start, especially for students and young people,
yeah.
all the generations to come. So I thank you, Damon, so much for your thoughts and your creativity.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And the feeling is very much mutual. And I want to second that I learned a lot from you, and you haven't in the same way you had to, you learn by explaining yourself. I had to do it to you. I like I said, like everything, it's a lot of spiritual stuff, but if people don't, why do I want it to be granted? Why do and that conversation with the people that would be viewing it is also
Mhm.
part of it, because art is a conversation, right?
Yes.
And I think that sometimes a lot of us artists are taught the opposite. You put
Yeah.
something up on the wall, people supposed to praise you for it. You're supposed to be super mysterious. And that's a part of it, yeah. But I think back to public art is not. It's meant to start curiosity and conversation. And
Yeah.
I hope that's what it does. But to that first question from you, Mama Jamala, it is on Market Street in the center of St. Louis. I think it's the 2200 block
Yeah.
on
20,
Market.
20th Street to 22nd, I think.
Yes. So that's that first piece, but it's gonna go all the way down to Harris Stowe. That is under construction right now. They took a lane out of the street, one of the biggest streets one of the main thoroughfares in the city, which is I didn't is amazing to me that it means that much. But they like it will terminate at Compton Market. So we actually will be having some later on, well, next month we'll be having a little bit of an event around that, and then but the official opening will be happening next year. That
Yeah.
like it will be.
So let me just say something about market, because you mentioned it's an important thoroughfare.
Mm,
And I remember the late and dear to me Martha Jane West told me that one of the reasons that The building, which is now Harris Stowe State University, was initially Vashon High School. And instead of putting the front door on the market side, which was where all the traffic was, they put it on the Laclede side so that white people wouldn't have to watch black kids go in and out of the building.
That's
So,
right.
so Damien, what you all are doing with this project is bringing that thoroughfare back into the spotlight, and
Mhm.
particularly with now that being a historically black university. So you see how these things like come together in ways that you didn't even expect.
And you
Exactly.
know, at
Most definitely.
Compton and Market, where this ends, was where the former uh, St. Louis Stars Negro Leagues
Yep.
baseball field was, and currently it is the Black Radio Hall of Fame. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that all of that going down Market Street is just so significant because
Yeah.
that was the heart of our commerce. We had churches on Market Street. We had Vashon High School. We had the People's Finance Building on Market and Jefferson. The entertainment district of Mill Creek was that very block, 20th to to
Yes.
Jefferson was all the famous ragtime and blues and jazz music in Mill Creek. So it's really so significant.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It's
I
having
think that it's people are going to be really proud of the finished product. We would be remiss if we didn't tell people that there's going to be a major exhibit of Mill Creek Valley at the Missouri Historical Museum, which kicks off. I think the opening is November 15th, but it's going to go on for several months. So if you miss it, you got plenty of chance to do that, and maybe even do a field trip with your family, your church, your fraternity, your sorority, to go there and then go down a few blocks to go to the monument. So
I have
Damon,
one more shameless
okay,
plug before we go
okay,
home.
no,
Go.
no,
Okay,
please,
November
please.
15th, the opening of the Mill Creek exhibit is called Mill Creek Black Metropolis. It's going to air and screen my documentary called Mill Creek When We Were There. Will screen on the first day, November
Okay.
15th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm glad you added that because I didn't remember that being in part of the promo.
Yeah.
So we will make sure that people get there. I can't wait to look at it myself. And just so that people know, what's coming up is for the month of November on Voices from the Battlefield. Next week, we're going to have Frederico Lobe, who is one of Missouri's many wrongfully convicted, probably one of the longest cases that the Organization for Black Struggle has been involved in. He's been incarcerated for almost 40 years, not for murder, for alleged rape. So we'll have him on. He's got a featured piece, a podcast that one of the local reporters is doing. And following that, Damon, you'll be happy to hear that Solomon Thurman will be on, and we're going to be talking about the anniversary of the Black aviators in flight over there at the airport. And then after that, we're going to be talking about the Osage Nation's reclaiming of the land and what that looks like, and the many betrayals of this government to the indigenous people of this country. And then finally, closing out November, we will be talking about the ballot initiative to restore the map, not the gerrymandered map that is going to eliminate the only black congressperson in Kansas City. So we'll have representatives from people, not politicians, on board. So it's a lot going on, y'all. So don't act like you're spectators. Let's get involved. And there, if you missed any of the shows, go to JamalaRogers.com and pick those up. And now that we have a visual component, go to YouTube for the Jamala Rogers station so you can see the lovely faces of the guests. Thank you again, Damon and Vivian. This is Jamala Rogers, your host, and I hope to see you on the battlefield.